Hi everyone, welcome back to part 2 of this tutorial about how to make clouds. Last time we exported the different files we're gonna need in Cinema. So we exported some OBJs and some VDBs. So I'm gonna add a link in the description so you can just download the files and you will be able to start from here if you want. So in this part, we're gonna import everything in Cinema. We're gonna add some hair and we're gonna add some hair for the fibers and we're gonna end up with a render. So before we open up Cinema 4D, we're gonna choose Cloud. So to do that, we're gonna stay in Houdini and as we used file cache to write the files, we can now just check the load from disk option, and so this will allow us to read the files from the disk directly, and we can see each cloud in real time without having to recalculate everything for each frame. The cloud on frame 8 is not too bad. I'm gonna select this one. So here we have our export folder. Here we have the OBJs. Here we have the VDBs. So we want the cloud mesh 8. So I'm gonna import that. So this will be our polygons. For the VDB, I'm just gonna create a redshift volume. And from there, we can just select our VDB 8. So first off, if I hide my mesh, let me just delete the texture because we don't need it. So for the redshift volume, we can preview it as a bounding box or as points. For now, we have 10 points. We're gonna increase this to 100. So here we can see the overall shape of the cloud. So first, if I go back to my bounding box preview, here you can see the size of the cloud. So we want this to be bigger, and so in the coordinates, I'm gonna set the scale to 150, like that. And then I'm gonna do the same for the mesh. I'm gonna call this cloud mesh because it's been exported at the same size as the volume. I'm gonna set this to 150 as well. So here I can set my redshift volume back to points. And now we can see that you have a mesh sitting right inside the points of the VDB. So what we could do now is select our cloud mesh and add in a displacer. In the shading tab, I can go to shader and add color. Then in the objects, I can change the height. So this will enable us to scale the mesh depending of the normals. I'm gonna hide my cloud mesh. I'm gonna save that. What we're gonna do now is I'm just gonna add a plane. So this will be our background. I'm just rotating it. So I'm gonna make a new redshift material, like so. I'm gonna call this BG background. I'm gonna import a texture. So I connect this into the diffuse channel. Then here in the reflection, I'm gonna set the weight to 0. So for now, I'm gonna use that. I apply this to the plane. So I'm gonna add in a redshift camera. I'm gonna add a keyframe. So this is not to animate anything. It's just so if for any reason we move the camera, it will go back to its place. So this is the first part. I'm going to redshift and I'm gonna create a dome light. In this dome light, I'm gonna add in an HDR image. If I now open the redshift IPR and put it to this side and hit render, we have only the background. So I'm gonna create a new redshift material volume. So this will be the cloud shader. I'm gonna change some settings in there. So we're gonna define the scatter channel to use the density. So I just hit render again. I just have to apply the shader to the redshift volume. So here we see something's going on. What you have to do before anything else is going to the dome light to volumes and set the contribution scale to 1. This way the dome light is able to illuminate the volume. There is really no transparency going on. So here what we need is changing our scatter coefficient and absorption coefficient. So if, for example, I reduce my scatter coefficient, you see it's starting to be darker. So I have to compensate for that in the absorption coefficient. I want to reduce those numbers some more. But usually what's working quite well, I found that the scatter coefficient should be the double as the absorption coefficient. This really depends on the look you wanna go for. You can really choose whatever you like. What could help is adding in geometry, like for example a cube. So this will help you to see how the transparency is working. So here I'm just adding in an redshift infinite light. I'm gonna rotate it. And we will have to set our contribution scale to 1. Otherwise it doesn't have no effect on the cloud. So this will be our background. I'm gonna clean this up. So I select everything, Alt G, and to put this in a null, I'm calling this environment. So what we want to do now is just adding some hair to the cloud mesh. So I select the mesh, I go to simulate, and I click on add hair. So we're gonna set the guides count to 200. So for the length, so I don't know why, but the length is off when I first add the hair. So if I hit regrow, you see that the hair are really long. So to avoid that, I just increase the length by 1, and then I go back to the length I want. So here in this example, it's 100 centimeters, and it seems to work. So maybe it's a refreshing issue. I don't know. Anyways, so now we're gonna change our hair material. For the color, we want something white, like that. We're gonna add some backlit color, which will go from light gray to white. And we're gonna change the thickness. It's gonna go from 0.2 to 0.01. So the hair will be thicker at the root and thinner at the end. Then we're gonna add some variation to the length. I'm gonna set this to 75. So this will add some randomization. We're gonna check the kink to have those hair to be not that straight. I'm gonna set this to 50%. So if we have a closer look now, we can see that the hair is quite angular. So we will have to select our hair object, and in the guide we're gonna increase our segments to 32. We want the guides to be growing on the polygon area, because before we were on the vertex, so each vertex, each hair is growing on each vertex. So on the polygon area, we have maybe something that will be more randomized. In the hair, we're gonna leave the count on 5,000. For the segments, we're gonna set this to 32. So here you can see the hair is better looking. Then next, what we're gonna do, I'm just gonna open up my hair again. We're gonna activate the bend. So just to see a little better, I'm gonna deactivate the volume so we just see the hair. So we're gonna set a huge value on the bend, like 1500%. So I'm gonna try activating the clamp. It seems to work. Sometimes it doesn't work that well because it's like if the clamp and the bend are conflicting. It seems to work. I'm gonna activate the clamp and I'm gonna set it to 50% too. So here, yeah, you can see we have some hair that doesn't do what they are supposed to do. In fact, they are clamping, but we don't want them to do that way. What we can do, we just increase the hair count to 5001. So this seems to solve the problem. And I don't know if it's something with the refreshing of the hair, I don't know. So these are the hair, and now I can activate my redshift volume again. So maybe we can just change the displacer value, maybe even set it to 0. So the hair is closer to the surface. So I'm gonna just check the length of the hair. It's 100 centimeters. Let's try 200 centimeters. They are more going out of the cloud, so this is not that bad. So what we could do now is having some hair. I'm gonna call this hair short. So having much more short hair inside of the cloud, and then a second hair object which will be hair long. So we want 200 as well, but for the length we're gonna increase this to 200 centimeters. So we will have a first layer of short hair inside the volume, and for the hair long we just want the guides, so we're gonna set the roots as guides. So you're gonna have some stuff sticking out here and there, and which will be much more interesting. So we could, for the hair short, we could, for example, have a try with 15,000. Here you can really art direct your cloud as you want. We could change the hair count or the bend value, having some clamping or not. So from here, it's really up to you to choose whatever look you want. So I'm gonna check this back. I'm gonna keep this look for the clouds. For the hair short, I'm gonna keep this to 5,000. I prefer that. So I'm gonna select everything and put this in a null using Alt G. So if we now wanted to import other cloud, let me go back to Houdini. I'm gonna select the cloud9. I'm gonna duplicate this. I'm gonna call this cloud9. I'm gonna import the cloud mesh 9. Okay, delete the texture, set the scale to 150. I'm gonna change the name, cloud mesh 9. I'm gonna copy it and paste it in our main file. So I move it right here. I add in my displacer, delete the old one. I'm gonna have to link it back with the hair. So you see that it's not updating. So I'm gonna change it back to polygon area. Here I'm gonna do the same. I'm going to reroute. Same here. So the hair are back in place. I'm gonna hide the cloud mesh. So I don't know why here in the hair short, in the hair tab, the route is set to as guides and I want it to be in auto. So we have the hair short and hair long working correctly. I just set my redshift volume back. So here I'm gonna have to update it. So it will be VDB 9. So here I just have the name of the VDB. And in this one we have the folder in which the VDB should be. I'm gonna copy paste this folder. So here you have the Cinema 4D file. It's going to look for the VDB in the Cloud Mesh folder. By indicating the folder name, we can now just change the number and the VDB updates. And Cinema is searching in the right folder. So this wouldn't work if we didn't have the folder name before. So I'm going back to VDB 9. And so here we have our second cloud. We could import all the clouds that we exported, but for now I'm just going to do this with the two clouds we already imported. I'm gonna create a cloner and drag both of my clouds into the cloner. We're gonna set the cloner to object. So I'm adding a plane with one segment in both width and height. So this will be on Z+. Then I'm gonna add in a connect. So if I create my connect while having the Alt button pressed, it's gonna be the parent of the plane. I'm gonna add in the connect as the reference for the cloner. So for the distribution, you see it's on vertex mode. So we want it to be on polygon center. I'm gonna show my cloud 8 again. So this connect with the plane inside will help us to position the clouds. So you can see that when I move, the hair are not following the clouds. So for now, I'm just gonna deactivate the hair. So which is interesting by using planes is you can place the clouds, but you can also rotate them. So now I just have to control drag my plane to add another cloud. So we can really quickly position our clouds, and the cloner is randomly using the different clouds that are inside. So I'm just gonna hide the connect objects. So now we just have to position them as we want. So now I'm gonna open up the render view. I'm gonna activate the bucket rendering. So you can see it's quite noisy in the volumes for now. So instead of increasing the samples in the redshift settings, it's better to go right into the light. So I uncheck my infinite light. So the light is only coming from the dome light for now. And you can see it's quite noisy. So the best way is to go directly inside the dome light in the attributes, and in the volume tab, you're gonna increase the samples there. So I set the samples to 64. You can see that the render is much cleaner. Here you can set this as high as you need. So here it's not that bad. It's less noisy without exploding the render time. So I'm gonna deactivate the dome light and activate my infinite light. So the infinite light seems to be less noisy than the dome light. So maybe 64 samples will be enough on this one. So this is how you clean the volume noise. I'm gonna get those hair back. So here you can see that the hair are not in place anymore. You just deactivate them and activate them back again, so they should be back in place. So something else about lights. So I'm just adding in an area light and a point light. So this is just to show you that the area lights aren't that great with volumes. So I set the contribution scale to 1, so they are lighting our clouds. So I'm just going to do that on only one cloud. It will be easier. I deactivate the cloner. I'm just keeping the last cloud. So I'm gonna just move my light over the cloud. So let's open up my render view again. Set it to bucket rendering. We want the area light to be spherical. So we could just adjust the samples and crank it up. But what I wanted to show you here is that, so I just let it finish to render. So this is the result with the point light. I didn't change anything in the samples. So here you get the result with the area light, and you see there is a huge difference in the noise. So you should really avoid these area lights with volumes. If I set this to 128, for example, it's gonna be cleaner, but you still have a lot of noise. So for example, if you have a look at the point light, it's still on 16 samples, and compared to the area light with 128 samples, you can see that the point light doesn't need that much samples. So if you can get away with point light, I would recommend using that. Okay, so that's it for today's video. I hope you liked it and that you learned something. Now it's your turn to play around with this little setup, and I hope to see you soon in another tutorial. Bye everyone.